ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright, speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, there's been kind of an interesting development with respect to Donald J. Trump and this idea that people aren't giving him this respect that he so, according to him, rightfully deserves. We know that the incoming Secretary of the Press, his incoming spokesperson, that of Sean Spicer, hit the news media outlets basically decrying the fact that people were not allegedly giving Trump all of the attention that he deserved and the proper sort of respect that a man of his caliber deserves. I find this rather laughable because if we step back into the annals of time just a little bit and reflect upon what Trump had done all throughout the primary process, particularly going after Texas Senator Ted Cruz's family and trying to use uncorroborated stories such as that from his friend David Pecker at the National Enquirer to say that Rafael Cruz, Ted Cruz's father, was somehow intimately involved with the JFK assassination due to, once again, an unsubstantiated photograph that could have been doctored, looked like it was doctored, of Rafael with the assassin Lee Harvey Oswald. You see, the problem that is coming up here is something that we have discussed with respect to the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist for quite some time, and also with their allies in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, that they go forth and profess that we don't hold people accountable for their words, deeds, and actions, that they do everything that they can to obfuscate the truth, and then, all of a sudden, we see that this uncorroborated thing comes forth, and they believe that it's an entitlement approach that they deserve to have respect. In Trump's case, and what Spicer is going forth and saying, is that Trump deserves this respect merely on account that he has achieved victory into the elected office, into the highest office of the land, that of President of these United States of America. But the way I was always raised, and Jeremy, I certainly think this was the way you were raised as well, is that we are supposed to earn respect. Respect is not just freely given. Respect is something you must earn. And if you fail to earn it, then you don't get it. You don't deserve it. Of course, that's not the way Trump looks at it. Trump has always operated, for the vast majority of his 70 years spent here on God's green earth, espousing the point of view of that of a frothing-at-the-mouth Fabian socialist leftist. He is one that just embraces the authoritarian strain, the totalitarian strain, and wants everything to be given to him, but he doesn't give it to others. You know, what is the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Why is it that Trump doesn't follow that axiom? Why is it that Trump ignores that, expecting respect to be a one-way street? Respect is by no means a one-way street. You have to earn it to receive it, and to receive it, you must earn it as well. That's just how it goes. But with Trump, it's as though he has always been this childlike character that wants to do whatever he wants, irrespective of what that does to others or how that comes across.
See, with Trump, he lives by the golden rule. And the golden rule in his mind is he who has the gold makes the rules. That's his mode of thinking. He's very brackish when it comes to social interworking with people. He doesn't know how to socialize properly with individuals. He thinks because he's in the position he has, respect must be given right off the bat. Now, in certain walks of life, in certain professions, that does hold true. Take law enforcement, for example. There has to be a certain modicum of respect automatically afforded to law enforcement officers or people who work in corrections or people who actually hold positions of authority. Here's the problem with Trump. He doesn't hold any position of authority yet. He is behaving and acting as if he does. He doesn't. And then he sends his little, you know, testicular roid, Sean Spicer, out there to run his mouth, say all these things, try to run people down because why? Trump doesn't have the cojones to do it himself. He talks
It,
about being, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm bigly. I'm a big winner. Blah blah blah. Whatever. But yet, when it comes down to it, he has all these little minions. Let's go back and look at him. Corey Lewandowski. You had Paul Manafort, Sean Hannity, and little orphan Annie Yap Yap Toto, give me a milk bone because I obviously don't know how to sustain a healthy diet. Coulter. All of these individuals are always, they're talking heads for him. Every single one of them. Because he doesn't have the testicular fortitude to do it himself. Now he wants to say, oh, I'll just tell it how it is. I'm not politically correct. But yes, you are politically correct because wasn't that long ago, Randy, we discussed his lack of understanding when it comes to the term American exceptionalism. He finds it offensive. He thinks that we shouldn't use that term because it offends other people. Mm-hmm. See, to me, this is the thing. When it comes to offending people, if you have a problem with offending people, then you are politically correct. Now, that's not to say that you don't walk up to somebody who's a total stranger, happens to be your elder, or if you're in church or a place of worship or things like, there's a time and a place. But see, in the arena of politics, you can't be politically correct. Trump claims that he's not politically correct, but he is. He's also politically correct by sending these talking heads out to do it because he wants to invoke plausible deniability. Well, I didn't tell them to say that. I mean, I told them to run damage control, but, hey, it came from their mouths, not mine. But yet he's the one who's complaining and bitching and moaning about it. He just needs to shut the hell up. Mm-hmm. All of them.
Yeah, but we know that Spicer is basically going out there trying to throw a tirade and a fit over all of this because, again, it's as though they have this tyranny of false unity. We've seen them pushing that ever since the primary process, but now they're wanting to push it even more so now. And he's saying, essentially, that the media has been cheering for the Democrats. Now, what's so funny about that to me is this is something that has been open and obvious for as far back as I can think, because we know that the Democrats have, or that the media, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, has always been in favor of the left. That has been their talking points for, well over a century now. This goes all the way back to William Randolph Hearst and his newspaper conglomeration at the turn of the 20th century. And what they were attempting to do, folks, is to basically control public opinion, to shape the destiny of the nation so that we all agreed to go along with a certain or particular form of thought, class of thought. And that is how you bring about groupthink in these United States of America. That is what these people are proactively pushing for, and they have been for a long time. But, it's interesting. There's a little thing I want to play that it was from Mark Hamill, who's most famous for his role as Luke Skywalker. But for those of you that grew up in the 90s, or, had kids that were growing up in the 90s and recall Batman, the animated series, Mark Hamill actually played the role of the Joker. And I've got this little clip of Hamill, who read Donald Trump's New Year's Eve tweet, that one of, I love everybody, even though they were losers and all that crap. I'm going to go ahead and cue that up now, just because, and it's going to be audio only because it's just an image anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and cue this up so that we can hear it. And it's just one of those amazing things. Unfortunately, there it goes.
Happy New Year to all, including to my many enemies, and those who have fought me and lost so badly. They just don't know what to do. Love.
Gotta love that. You've just gotta love
God, that's
Mark
creepy.
Hamill, Hamill doing that. It is creepy.
That's creepy.
It's very creepy. And there's a reason for that. It's because he is connecting with this sort of juvenile delinquent type of
Sociopath.
approach. Yeah, of course, that's what the Joker was. And when you listen to the words of Trump himself, one of the things that Hamill had actually gone out there and said was that nobody writes lines for villains better than President-elect Trump. Granted, Hamill is a liberal, for lack of a better term. He is one that adheres to a left-wing ideology, but it's truly incredible, right on to bone-chilling, the way that Trump's tweet there just personifies that, just is, the epitome of everything that is ill, wicked, and evil. Now, that's not to say that we just think that he's going out there and being evil. It's what he stands for and represents. It's the characteristic that he shows off to the American public. Again, one of the things that we have to recall is that if you're going to desire respect, or if you think that you deserve to receive respect, well, then you have to earn it. That is not something that is just willy-nilly handed out. That is not something that is just given unless, with the example that you had given there earlier, Jeremy, with the elderlies and those in church. Well, they've earned it due to the sacrosanct nature of the surroundings that they're in, or having earned that by living their life. But when it comes to ultimate decisions that impact the way that the nation's going to go forward, that impacts the way that we exercise power, and that impacts the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people, then no, it certainly has to be earned. And that's because it's in a professional capacity. Politics is a job there. They are, doing the job of attempting to run the country. And if you get away from that, it's not that you've earned respect there. You have to earn it. And so he thinks he's entitled to it. But I'm sorry, I don't go along with that mentality. That is not my mindset, just as I am sure that that is not your mindset either, Jeremy.
No, absolutely not. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to give everybody an example of why he is, for lack of a better term, idiotic with demanding certain amount of respect. Remember the whole campaign promise, I'm going to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it? Well, wasn't it just a few days ago that it came out that he's wanting we the people, the taxpayers, to build the wall because, well, the legislation's already in place. It was just never acted on. So now we're going to act on it. Oh, and by the way, Mexico's going to reimburse us. Huh? Now, here's the thing. Just a little side note that plays right into this. New Year's Eve, I was at my parents' place. My younger brother. We got talking about building a wall and this. And it's like he was at the Super Bowl when his team had won the Super Bowl and he got all giddy about it. That's how he behaved when Trump was elected. And he says, without even thinking, I know he didn't think this through, the poor little lad, and I feel it's my civic obligation and kinship obligation as his
Yeah, your
older brother
filial
to
duty.
teach, yeah, familial duty, to teach this young strapping lad a lesson when he stuck out his hand and says, I will bet you $100 that Trump builds the wall and then Mexico pays for it. I says, okay. I says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I'll give him 4 years to do this. He says, I think he'll do it in 2. I said, okay, you're on. So we established the criteria and whatnot, and it looks as though 2 years from now on Christmas Eve, I'm going to be holding in my hand a nice, crisp, fat Benjamin Franklin faced $100 bill. Because
Trump replaces it with his daughter Ivanka.
Shit, that's just not gonna. No, at that point in time, its currency will have to change to other precious metals, lead, brass,
Monopoly money.
Yeah, something. But see, the whole point of this is, how can you demand respect when you run your whole entire campaign on one cliche statement, one buzz phrase? I'm going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. Then you have all your little talking heads speaking of, well, there's already a law in place and he's just going to go ahead and allow that law to go through. First of all, he yes, as the president, it is the executive branch. You are the executor of those laws, to execute the laws that are made. That is your job. Yes, the law is on the books. However, you cannot turn around and say Mexico's going to reimburse us. How are you going to enforce that? How are you going to make them do anything? All Mexico has to say is, yeah, whatever. Yeah, no way, Jose. Not going to happen. And again, what's he going to do? Annex them? Declare war on them?
Well, you know that Vicente Fox had already gone to Twitter and had responded, I think, with a profanity-laced type of response to Trump's build a wall thing. It seems that they've had a rather contentious relationship building up for quite some time.
Yeah, Vicente Fox. I think he actually became familiar with Farouk as well. So, I mean, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
But again,
what it says is ultimately when you're dealing with the president or an office that is going to have relations with the rest of the world, you have to follow the rules that are in place. Otherwise, you are placing the entire safety of the United States, the entire national security apparatus of the United States in jeopardy. And one of the things that keeps coming up to mind is, I know that we mentioned on that program that we did together back during the time of the election of those external threats. And then there was also the From Russia with Manlove episode, because we know that Trump does have this relationship with Russia. He is seemingly unwilling to admit that Putin has done anything wrong, or if he does, it is with the utmost of reluctance. And we see that he didn't want to agree with our intelligence community. He wanted to side with Russia instead, saying that Russia had the right idea, that Russia was approaching it the correct way, and that our intelligence community were nothing short of a bunch of losers and idiots who didn't know what he did because he had special evidence, and he knew things that other people didn't know, and that he was going to release that on Tuesday. And that was last Tuesday. Was that released? Well, much like the Obama birth certificate and birther issue that he had pushed all the way back in 2011 and before, nothing of substance came from it. Nothing came to fruition. And for those who were real big supporters of Trumpy Dumpty, look at what happened with Joe Arpaio. The guy that replaced him is saying that illegal aliens are guests. So, is this part of the Make America Great Again? Is this part of building the wall and making Mexico pay for it? Except for the fact that they're actually going to Congress to have them to appropriate it, to have we, the people, pay for it? And what has this wall been assessed at, value-wise? Isn't it something like $35 to $85 billion to build the damn thing? I think so.
Well, here's the other thing. During laying out the criterion for my brother and I's bet, I told him, I says, okay, we have to establish what constitutes a wall. Now, in my mind, logically speaking, a wall is something that is impenetrable. You can't go over it, you can't go through it, you can't go under it, you can't go around it. It is there as a blockade.
Yeah, it's a barrier.
And it's a barrier. Now he says, well, the way I look at it, he says, well, if it's just a chain link fence, well, a fence is not a wall. A fence is not a wall. Fences can come down. See, Trump refers to this, and I believe he referred to it in one of his recent tweets, as the Great Wall. The Great Wall of what? Now, is he invoking some kind of notion of the Great Wall of China? Or is what we talked about in our New Cold War episode, what's he going to do? Reestablish the wall of the Berlin Wall? What's going to happen with this? But see, my brother says, look, I don't care if he puts motion sensors on the border and just has increases of foot patrol there. That's a wall to me. Are you serious? Are you serious? What is that going to do? That's going to be even less than what we have there now. And we have a problem with people coming in illegally. He says, I don't care. He's going to do it. How? It doesn't matter how he's going to do it. Tell me how. I need to know these things. That's like going to a mechanic saying, you have an engine problem. I'm going to fix it. Well, how are you going to fix it? I need to know the parts, the labor, exactly what you're going to do to my vehicle. It doesn't mean you don't need to know all that stuff. Just know that I'm going to fix it.
Yeah,
I don't think that would be a mechanic of mine.
No, it wouldn't be someone that I would trust either. And recall that this was one of the things that a Trump surrogate in Chris Hamburger Christie had said too.
Hamburger.
Hamburger. When we go all the way back to the primary process, one of the things he said is, yes, Trump drops all of these promises. Trump has made all of these robust promises, but he never explains how he's going to do it. And, the how, the what, the when, the where, and the why, this all has to play into it. It's all part of the ongoing dialogue that helps us get some sort of an inkling of an understanding of what it is that we're seeing, what it is that we're going to do, and how we're going to go about doing it. You see, the reason that matters so much in a constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic like that of these United States of America is because we don't have a singular titular head of state that does this. We do not have the consolidation or the centralization of power in such a degree. In fact, our founding fathers went to great lengths and extents to ensure that these United States of America were not either a direct democracy that fails to recognize the sovereign rights of the popular individual, in other words, our fundamental and inalienable rights, which happen to be endowed to us by our Creator, who is none other than the God of nature himself, and it's also to ensure that we don't have a tin-pot dictator or one branch of government taking complete control of the governmental apparatus. It was done that way because we are a representative republic. That's what it takes for us to be a free land. But unfortunately, we see that with the Trump surrogates, the Lion Branch Trumpvidians who continue to congregate in their Trumpvidian tabernacle, that they just don't care about the truth. It really comes out as something that doesn't make much sense. It's because they've fallen for a cult of personality. They're not wanting to discuss the truth. They're not wanting to address the problems as they arise in front of us. And again, that is just something that when it comes to the forefront and when it is put in play, it does not work in the best interests of the American people. It once again serves to further divide us, and allowing this divisiveness that has become the cornerstone, the new established norm of the American system of polity, to fester and to worsen as time continues its incessant march on. And so, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we want to set up for 2017? We know that Trump and his surrogates are out there whining and complaining, saying that he is not receiving the respect that he deserves from either the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media or the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. It's
Yeah.
He demands it. Everything is a demand to him. Everything has to come back to he deserves it just because he's dumb. Now, you know what that tells me, Jeremy? It tells me that he still has not wrapped his mind around the fact that he is a public servant, that he works for we the people now. And it also brings me to a point that I want to make that you had mentioned earlier. He's not in office yet. There is a reason why we have the President of the United States of America swear an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution to the best of his ability before he even begins acting in an official capacity. The reason that we do this is that he has to operate under the constraints and restraints of the supreme law of the land, which, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, what's known in the common vernacular as the Supremacy Clause, is none other than our shared United States Constitution itself. Unfortunately, he doesn't care about that, because as by his own admission, he has never once read that sacred document from cover to cover, because he's never found any intrinsic nor inherent value in the document. And so, of course, he's going to act in a way that ignores the Constitution, that blatantly goes out and tries to set it to where he can do anything and everything. And it's like that Sprint deal where he's talking about 5,000 jobs. That's where Spicer was really whining, saying that everybody was mocking him for that. Well, yes, of course they are. Because that is crony corporatism. That goes against everything that conservatives, which he claims to be, even though we know for damn well sure that he's not, have railed against. It's just a new slate of hypocrisy that they are putting forth on a slab in front of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, placing this nation back into a backward slide into that sort of thing that we just cannot accept now.
Well, it goes deeper than that, and I think what it is it's projectionism. See, Trump's a blithering idiot, and people say, "Oh no, he's a blithering idiot. He's not a smartly guy. He doesn't have a bigly brain. He's not smart at all. He may be crafty, devious, manipulative, and crooked, but he's not smart. Because see what it is, he's projecting all of his ignorance, all of his dumbness, and lack of intellect onto the American people so that they can reverberate it back to him. That's how he feeds off of people. He's dumb. He convinces other people that he's smart, thereby making them dumb. And then when they espouse what he is doing, he feeds off it and edifies himself. It's like, self-aggrandizement. That's what it boils down to. You mentioned the Sprint thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just one. Let's look at the General Motors thing. Just earlier or last week, it was the Chevy Cruze. Criticizing General Motors for the Chevy Cruze being made in Mexico. Well, General Motors came right out and said, yeah, no. All the Chevy Cruze vehicles that are made or sold in the United States are made in the United States, in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great, Randy, because we had a very good exchange on Facebook to where you said, that's cool on Trump. The problem is I've never heard of Ohio, Mexico. I guess I need to brush up on my geography. Now we had some individuals saying that, you need to do your homework. You need to do this. People need to understand. Oh, it was an honest mistake. No, see, if you're the type of individual, you come out, you're bitching and moaning and whining and complaining because nobody respects you, and yet you pull some dunderheaded stunt like that, You should think before you speak, or at least have somebody do the thinking for you and write it out in crayon so you don't look like a blithering imbecile.
Yeah, well, he is a blithering imbecile.
Well, he is a blithering imbecile, and people could put it out in finger paints for him, and he still wouldn't comprehend it. I mean, after all, his intellectual
if you put it out in finger paint, of course that would offend him because he has such little stubby fingers.
Small hands
you see, he's not about political correctness unless it's something that comes back against his own self-image
and bites him in the ass.
Yeah. And so what it really boils down to here is that they are saying that he deserves respect when he doesn't give it to anybody else. I mean, think back to that tweet that Mark Hamill was reading as the Joker. Yes, he was reading it as the Joker to make a point, but that the whole language of that, Happy New Year to everyone, even my enemies who have lost so badly that they don't know what to do, love. That is sarcastic, that is snide, it is childish, that is what you would expect from a petulant child, an arrogant, petulant child that does not know the ways of the world, not what you expect from the man who is going to be sworn in 12 or 11 days as the 45th president of these United States of America, the leader of the free world. He's going to sit there and act like an idiotic and petulant child. That is, that reflects poorly on the United States. The other attribute that it fully ignores is the fact that in the office of President of the United States of America, Trump is supposed to be representing all Americans, even those Americans who did not vote for him. Yet that's not the position he's assuming. Now, I know that one of the first things that the Lion Branch Trumpidians are going to try and do is they're going to try and come forth here and say that, well, Obama was worse. Obama did it too. Yeah, but Obama. You see, it's the yeah, but Bush that Obama did all over again. It doesn't matter what Obama did. Two wrongs do not make a right. It's as though the Lion Branch Trumpidians were not raised well by their parents. It's as though their parents didn't teach them what common courtesy and common decency was. Furthermore, it's as though their parents had not taught them what civil discourse is. I know that you and I have oft times lamented this on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, Jeremy, but it's one of those things that we just cannot ignore. It's this inability to converse, this inability to have a free exchange of ideas in the free marketplace of ideas that has led to the horrific sort of polarization that we've been experiencing. And if memory serves me correctly, we have not been as divided as we are at this point currently, as we sit here speaking into our microphones, delivering this message unto you, since the year 1860. That was the year before the outbreak of the war between the states, or as it's known in the common vernacular, the American Civil War. We have not been as divided nor as polarized since that point. And I don't see it getting any better. We see those people that went out and tortured that mentally handicapped person, saying, F white people, F Trump. What has Trump done to try and rein that back? What has Trump done to try and calm the tensions that we're building? Remember, that was one of the things that Ted Cruz had warned about during the primary process, was that he was advocating and promoting violence, and that he was inciting it, and that this was not good. And of course, the Lion Branch Trumpidians just ran out in circles with their hands in the air like a gaggle of maggot idiot-eating fools. And what does it tell us? Well, it tells us that they don't know what the hell they're doing, and that they don't stand for or represent the values that we do.
Well, I'm glad you brought all those up, because we have somebody new to the show in our comments. I want to welcome Sixers JT. Now he's already asked us a couple of questions, or asked a question and took a shot in the dark on this with us. He asked if we were liberal or conservative. Well, I'll answer that question. We're what we have dubbed as constitutional compositionists. See, to us, it is the Constitution or nothing, because the Constitution being the supreme law of the land, without that, we have nothing. With no constitutional rights, we have nothing. We do not advocate any legislation that is violative of the Constitution. And he goes on to say, he says, I'm guessing you're a Marco Rubio supporter because you're making fun of his hands. Well, no, Marco Rube EIEIO, the little backseat debutante Coco Cabana boy. See, here's the thing. No, we're not Rubio supporters. Has he done things that have followed the Constitution? Yes. We applaud him for that. A few. However, you could do all the right things in accordance with the Constitution, but the second you do one wrong thing that's violative of it, it erases all of the good deeds or all of the following of the Constitution that you've done. See, this is why I've become harsh with Ted Cruz, because now I saw he was on Hannity the other night saying, I'm now supporting or campaigning or, talking to people in different states, advocating for Donald Trump. I hope he does well. I hope this happens and everything. And, this is why people need to unify in this and that. Well, sorry, Ted, you're off your rocker there, because I can never support or get behind somebody who sees no value in me as a United States citizen. You see no value, intrinsic or inherent or otherwise, in the Constitution because you never read it. That tells me you don't see any value in the American citizens, we the people. And it plays right into what you said earlier, that Trump is, he thinks he's this messianic figure, automatically demanding of this and demanding of that, much like Obama, much like every other leftist, the Fabians. He's a dyed-in-the-wool Fabian, is what he is. And now we're seeing people coming out of the woodworks that we, against their better judgment, supported these other individuals, and now it's like they're a bunch of turncoats. The Benedict Arnolds of, our great country that we have now. And yes, it is great. It doesn't need to be made great again, because that would imply that it has stopped being great. Again, as we said numerous times, the Constitution still exists. It is still the rule of the land, the supreme law of the land. Therefore, our country has never ceased in being great.
Well, I liken this, Jeremy, to, if you have a house and you need to have that house remodeled, do you sit there and say that you don't think it's a great location to live anymore? Do you think it's not something that fits you anymore? No. You go and you restore it. You remodel it. You restore it. So what you're doing is you are taking it back to, a position of prosperity, a position that is pristine. Exactly. And so that's what we need to do as a nation and a people. We need to get back to the Constitution, but not just the Constitution, the way it was originally composed, the way that our founding fathers intended for the Constitution to apply. If Trump was in favor of that, if Trump had given me any reason to believe that, he would have instantaneously earned my respect. He would have instantaneously have received the respect of both myself and Jeremy and our first Air Marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward. It would have all played out that way. It's just that we have given him plenty of time to come forth and to profess that he adheres to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, and to my knowledge, he has not done that yet. He has not made any concerted effort to say, what I said about Cruz's family was wrong. What I said about this idea of spending $1 trillion on infrastructure and a stimulus spending package that is Keynesian economics, just like Barack Hussein Obama did, is wrong. I'm not going to do that. He would earn our respect, but he hasn't done that. That's not his modus operandi. That's not the way he is approaching the system of American polity. The other attribute of this that really kind of bothers me is how he keeps going forth and saying that, it's me, I, just what I do, not what anyone else does, that basically controls what he does. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because, again, it takes us away from that which literally makes this nation function. And what is it that makes this nation function other than we, the people? It has to be we, the people, working in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in order to restore the nation. It can't be government. That's part of the problem. We have been turning to government all too often as the end all be all solution to every assortment of problems that has been facing us for far too long now. That doesn't work. It can't work.
Well, that's why we've always said that, one of the key fundamental building blocks of having a constitutional representative republic is the people. They have to be willing to be held accountable first before they can hold anybody else accountable. And that's what we need to get back to. And again, I'm going to revert right back to this exchange on your Facebook post here. And I made the comment, a gentleman, mutual friend of ours, says, no, those are dishonest mistakes. When I mentioned, about the JFK thing with Rafael Cruz, the intrinsic value of the Constitution, you didn't see any of that in there. Or when he said he was going to put Hillary in jail, and then he changed his mind after he was, elected, won the election, saying, "Oh, I don't want to see good people go through that." See, there's no such thing as a dishonest mistake. Mistakes are unintentional. He purposely made those comments during the campaign because he knew it would drive people up. It would get their fur up. It would get them into a frenzy. It'd whip them up and get them to do what he wants them to do. See, that's propaganda. Hitler did the exact same thing. He would do it when the Nazis would have meetings in local pubs and all the rallies with the Gestapo and so on and so forth and the like. They would do these things, and then anybody that's disagreed with them, well, at that point in time, they'd take them all back and beat them to death or put a bullet in their brain pan. Mm-hmm. That's what would happen. Now, that hasn't happened, except that Trump did advocate for violence. He says, yeah, people like that should be carried out on stretchers. Or go ahead and take care of them. I'll pay your legal fees, I promise. See, he advocated for it. It just never went to the lengths that happened during Nazi Germany. But in my response, I go on to say that, those statements by Trump are purely intended as propaganda, which we just covered. Which leads me to the logical conclusion that the statements regarding General Motors follow the same linear thought by him. I suppose someone now is going to make the argument that what Hitler said about protecting the children of Germany was an honest/dishonest mistake as well. Because, see, all of that falls right in line. It falls in line with this whole Planned Parenthood thing about them talking about, we'll defund Planned Parenthood, we'll do this, we're going to keep certain funding because it needs to be there for, women's health issues. What a bunch of crap. See, it's all conjecture, it's all doublespeak, and what they're doing when Trump and his talking heads put this stuff out there, they're telling people exactly what the people want to hear and exactly what their intentions are in doing these things. He has no intention of building the wall. He says he does. He says Mexico's going to pay for it. Well, now the taxpayers are going to pay for it because legislation already exists, and Mexico's going to reimburse us. Exactly how is Mexico going to reimburse us? Am I going to get some kind of refund when I do my taxes and I get my tax returns back?
Yeah, you're going to get 5 pesos back.
I'll get 5 pesos. Maybe I'll get a bottle of, I don't know, Jose Cuervo or something. Maybe the worm will be in there if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
See, it's nonsensical drivel and crap is what it boils down to. So it just comes to the point of people need to have an enlightenment. They need to have an understanding. They need to first get back to the primitive when it comes to these things, meaning that we have to get back to the Constitution. You cannot legislate morality. A lot of people want to talk about, it's immoral to do this and, it's intolerant. Screw tolerance. Again, the only tolerance I care about is when I'm hand loading my ammunition. I take careful tolerance to not put too much powder in there so I don't blow my face off when I shoot my guns. That's the only tolerance I care about.
Right.
Other than, now, I will be intolerant when it comes to people violating the Constitution. I will be intolerant when it comes to people trying to legislate or dictate morality. See, morality comes from people being able to be willing to hold themselves accountable. You get back to the Constitution, ethical and moral behavior will take care of itself, just like the marketplace will take care of itself when it comes to health insurance. People are up in this frenzy of repeal and replace. You can't repeal something that has no constitutional validity to exist in the first place. The only thing that needs to be done is say, no, we're not going to enforce it.
Well, yeah, you have to take it off the books. You have to take it off the books because it's already on the books. That's the problem. Because it creates this legal precedent that then has to be overcome. But here's the other attribute of it. It's that what we see is that what they're wanting to do with the so-called Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act is to keep the most expensive portions of it and then try and work around another type of bill that will, fit whatever designs he has for it.
And that means hopes that those more important or more expensive portions...
That it becomes Trump care. That it becomes Trump care as opposed to Obamacare. And recall that one of the things that Trump had said back when he was on the campaign trail, when he was there in front of Jake Tapper's CNN town hall, and he had been asked by that veteran what the three most important attributes or responsibilities of government was. First of all, he said defense, defense, defense. That's fine. That's mentioned in the Constitution. Kudos to him for mentioning that. But then when he started mentioning education and healthcare, those things are not found within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. And when you go back to how the Constitution itself was originally designed, we have a system of federalism, meaning that our system is split into a two-tier quasi-sovereign on each end of it. The governments of the several states and the federal government. The governments of the several states are possessive of what is known as plenary or near absolute authority. It's partly because they, as a governmental entity and of a body, existed before the Constitution was ratified. And those that entered after were placed with full faith and credit on the same footing as the original 13 colonies or 13 states. But the other attribute is that our founding fathers intrinsically and inherently distrusted the consolidation or centralization of power in the hands of a central authority figure. When you go back to that long, drawn-out, bloody affair that was the American War of Independence, you come to one inexorable conclusion that we were fighting the centralized and consolidated power of the Crown and Parliament of Great Britain, the most organized, powerful military force known to man in the late 18th century. That is who we were fighting. That is what we won our independence from. The problem is, we see that we are now approaching a point where we want to give the government control of 1/6 of our gross domestic product, and thereby control corruption and power. That trifecta is what it's about. It's not about providing people with a higher standard of treatment. It's not even about truly insuring people that well. You're always going to see the premium skyrocket, particularly when you force the insurance companies to accept pre-existing conditions. That's like having a car accident and then going to the insurance company, hey, I need to be insured for this. You're going to pay for it, right? Doesn't work. That is a redistributive scheme of the worst order. But you see, that's what Obamacare is. That's what Obamacare is, and that's what Trump care will be as well.
Yeah, just like Romney care in Massachusetts and Hillary care during the Clinton regime. It's all the same. Now, Randy, we have another visitor. I've already welcomed her or him. I'm guessing it's a her, Octavia Melody. She comes in, says hey, and I says welcome. She says, is this liberal? And then she says, oh, well, apparently because she saw the comments, we support the Constitution. And I said, no, far from it. And NVM, I guess this means never mind. Well, she apparently loves you, Randy, and I guess this is a first. She says, "I effing love this guy. I freaking love this guy, making great points." And you are. So I mean, it's great. I love this exchange. I love having guests come on. Even though, and eventually, folks, we will have to where we can have a call-in session or people actually invited in and actually on the air with us, rather than us just having to read comments at this point in time. It's just it's just the way we have to do it. But Octavia Melody wants to ask a political question. Sure, go ahead, and any question you want, go ahead and ask it, and we'll see what we can do about doing our best to address it and answer it for you.
Yeah. And folks, there will be a little bit of delay time between the video and, us being able to address that because my internet connection is not exactly the best in the world because it's Spectrum, and so we know that it's bad. So I have a minute delay between the encoder software and what comes up. So it will come. We will address you. It just may be a minute after you thought we would. But I want to hit something here with centralized government. Why is it that when you listen to those frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists that go out of their way to try and lambast and attack and go after everything that they consider big pharmaceutical, big tobacco, big alcohol, big oil, big this, big that, they never, ever have anything bad to say about big government. In fact, that is what they always champion. That is what they always push for. That is what they make the epicenter of their life. But it's hypocritical on their part because big government is far worse than any type of big business that they're complaining about. Why? Because big government has the ability to coerce you out of your property, out of your life. And they do it through duress. And of course, you'll see that with the takeover of healthcare. This push to have healthcare there. You always hear about the death panels. Well, that is a bunch of nameless, faceless, and ultimately unaccountable government bureaucrats deciding who receives what type of treatment and when based on what their preconceived notion on a bright line rule chart is for your contributive value to society. That's what they base it on. It's not right. In fact, it's dead wrong. It denies your human dignity, your individual capacity and identity, which when you think back to what are the fundamental pillars of the United States, it's self-accountability and self-responsibility working in tandem to give us self-determination. That's what our founding fathers based us on. But here's the problem. We see that both sides of the political aisle are ignoring this. Both sides of the political aisle are trying to force us into a government-controlled piece of crap.
Well, Octavia Melody has a question up now, and she says, how is Trump going to replace Obama's care without pulling the rug from under the people on it? Well, here's the thing. Simple answer, he can't. He can't because and this is the most direct answer, there is no constitutional provision or authority delegated to anybody, legislative branch or executive branch or judicial branch when it comes to healthcare legislation. They simply do not have the authority under the Constitution to even replace it with anything. It doesn't even have any constitutional authority to exist to begin with, because for the simple fact that, well, I just off the top of my head, and folks, I actually wrote a paper on this, by the way, which I was accused of plagiarizing a U.S. attorney. That was fun.
Well, on this paper, I wrote
over almost 2 years ago. I wrote this paper, and basically the highlights of it. And I'll give some key examples of why it's violative of the Constitution. First of all, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, which says no bill of attainder nor ex post facto law shall be passed. It's a bill of attainder because it specifically names an individual or a group of individuals that are penalized or to be penalized without a judicial proceeding. Well, if you're penalized, and let's take the root word penal or penalty. Penalties are always associated with crimes, so therefore they automatically make it a crime. They penalize you and fine you, which automatically invokes a violation of your Fifth Amendment rights because there's no due process. You don't have a judicial proceeding, along with the Sixth Amendment because, well, you're deprived of judicial process or judicial proceeding. Therefore, you're automatically by proxy denied legal counsel. Also with the Seventh Amendment because it deals with monetary values exceeding $20. And furthermore, the Eighth Amendment because it's an excessive fine and a punishment. And of course, we can go on and list the Ninth Amendment, the 10th Amendment. We can look at Article 4, Section 4. We can look at the 14th Amendment with the Privileges and Immunities Clause. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. So, I mean, I have a whole paper on it in my notes on Facebook under my profile under Facebook. And what I'll do is if you go to Facebook and look up the show, The Wright Flyer Radio Aviation Excellence, I'll post it there. I'll do that soon. And we can, it's there for your reading enjoyment and pleasure and, intellectual gratification, if you will.
Yeah. The other thing is, what we have to do with it is, when I say that we have to pull it off the books, first and foremost, the way that the legal code in the United States works is that once a law is put on the book, even if it is an invalid law, it stays on the book. And so you have to make it clear for the judiciary and for the just clear and proper, efficient governance to have that taken off. But the problem is, we have people like even Rand Paul, who should know better, since he claims to be a constitutionalist and is a physician. He is sitting there saying that, they should replace it at the same time that they're repealing it. Well, that would be essentially giving credence and credibility to it, and therefore it's going to make us stuck, because how are we going to address the problem if we still have the government subsidies in place and the tax apparatus to essentially penalize those that have refused to buy into it? That's the deal. It's all of a sudden creating an ex post facto law and a bill of attainder, as Jeremy was mentioning. And of course, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3 prohibits that outright. And you see, this is the problem. When we have the government acting in such a way that is so far distanced and divorced from the clear and concise language of the Constitution, that's when these other problems arise. We hear so many voters say that, well, I'm worried about the economy. I'm voting the economy. Or I'm voting based on health care. Or I'm voting on firearms alone. There really is no way to be a one-issue voter unless your one issue is the Constitution. That all of a sudden then becomes an all-encompassing issue, because the Constitution is that great contract. You see, we are based on a natural law contract. The Constitution is that contract. It has the terms and conditions that govern both parties to it. Now, who are the parties to it? It's we the people and the government. And the government is supposed to be our servant. Now, the beautiful thing about the Constitution is when you go to the Bill of Rights, or the first 10 amendments to it, you will see that one of the least discussed attributes of the First Amendment is that it is the right of the people to come together to petition the government for a redress of grievances. In other words, that is our first avenue. That is our first duty, obligation, and responsibility in our capacity as American citizens. But if the government continues to ignore that, eventually we have the right to stand up and protect our rights. In fact, you will find that language in the Declaration of Independence and in the correspondence of Thomas Jefferson, when he said that it is the right, and dare I say, even the duty, the responsibility of the people to break the chains and shackles of a tyrannical, rogue, and ultimately illegitimate government. We are fast approaching that point here. Because one of the things that Trump has done recently, well, not Trump, but the incoming Congress, and I think this was kind of a publicity stunt to try and get some of the ethical concerns of Trump out of the way, is that they said that they were going to, basically gut the Congressional Ethics Committee, that little independent group, to investigate them. Why? Because they say that Congress can be a self-investigating body. Really? After they kept Charlie the tax cheat wrangle, who wants everybody else to be taxed at an astronomical rate in with a slap on his wrist? I thought the whole thing that Nasty Pelosi was going on about when she came to power as the majority leader back in 2006, which she has fortunately lost, was that, well, the culture of corruption's over. I mean, my facelift has rejected me, and my humanity left me years ago, but the culture of corruption is over.
Yeah, it's just here's the other thing. Here's the other thing. When it comes down to it, people say, well, with healthcare and everything, okay, so the federal government doesn't have any constitutional authority. That means it falls to the states. Not so much. Because, see, the states cannot even legislate healthcare insurance. Mitt Romney did in Massachusetts, and other states have. But the thing is, when you have a state legislature or a state government making legislation that is in violation of the United States Constitution, that legislation in and of itself is void ab initio as well. This is why the Constitution under Article 6, Clause 2 is known as the Supremacy Clause. The Constitution is first and foremost, even above the states' constitutions. We would not have the states' constitutions but for the Constitution existing in the first place. That takes first priority and precedent. You cannot allow the states to legislate these things if it's going to be in violation of the Constitution. Why? It goes back to the two parties of the Constitution. We the people and the government. It's not just the federal government, but it's also the state's government. Because in the 10th Amendment, that is the way it's laid out. Power is not delegated to the United States government, nor prohibited to by the states, are reserved to the states, prohibited by the Constitution, are reserved for the states or to the people. The thing is, the people are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. You cannot violate their rights just because the federal government doesn't have the authority to do something. Doesn't mean that the state always has the authority to do something. The state still has to follow at that chain of command. They get their powers derived from we the people. The way the system was set up, and the founding fathers are absolutely genius with this, is power resides with the people. We delegate a little bit of authority to the states and even less to the federal government. That way we have the checks and balances. That's what the checks and balances are entailed in the Constitution. A lot of people say, well, it's just the checks and balances between the equal branches of government. Well, that's another myth and misnomer. There are no equal branches of government. The legislative branch is the most powerful branch of government. Why? Because, well, they have the biggest part of the Constitution, for one. Number two, they control all the funding. They have authorities to actually...
Jeremy, I'm going to try and invite Octavia into into the hangout here. Let's see. It's Octavia. I'm having to do this monger@gmail.com. Okay, let's see here. Yep. Okay, the invite is sent.
Okay. Well, let's hope Octavia can get in here. We'd absolutely love to have another person in here on the show. We've had First Air Marshal Nelson on here a few times, which we have to get him back in here again soon.
We do. It's been too long.
Too long.
It really has. There we are.
Octavia, welcome.
Welcome to the Wright Flyer.
Sorry, 1 second, my audio.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
There we go.
Sorry about the technical difficulties, folks, but this is kind of a first for us as far as having a guest on the show of this caliber. Octavia, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear?
We can barely hear you. But you said you had some questions of a political nature that you needed to discuss with us, and we'll be glad to help you in whatever way we can.
All right, so here's, I think, kind of obvious. A lot of people are doing, the obvious, my teacher,
You're going to have to turn your mic up just a little bit. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Same here.
How about now?
Okay,
Much
that's
better.
perfect.
I just realized it's using my headset instead of my tablet audio.
Technology.
I
All
love
right,
it.
so you guys know how usually teachers are union, so they're liberal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm in Michigan. I didn't know where you guys are, but I'm in Michigan.
A fellow Michiganian. How about that?
I'm up north.
Okay.
My teacher's a liberal, and he's kind of, I don't know if it's completely illegal, but he's forcing his ideas onto his students, constantly bashing Trump in class and making very crude remarks about conservatives, and then he can't say conservative without racist in the same sentence. It's really bothering me. Is that completely legal?
Well, it's legal for him to say it, but what he's not allowed to do is to say that I'm going to come out and grade you a certain way if you believe a certain thing, or come out and state that you have a certain belief. He certainly cannot have it to where you get special treatment based on a type of political action or belief that you have. For instance, I was in college about, oh gosh, I'm showing my age here now. I graduated, what was it, almost 9
man.
years ago now.
Yeah. Hey, I'm older
I
than you, Randy. Come on.
Yeah, not by much, Jeremy. I had it to where this was when the first so-called immigration reform issue was going on, and I had a professor that was going to give extra credit to people who would go to a pro-illegal alien rally. And now this was 2007 or 8 that occurred. And I went to the dean and I said, you know what, this isn't permissible. Because what you are trying to do is to say that a certain type of mentality must be accepted, or you're going to penalize people for not believing or acting or agreeing with the same type of overarching view that the professor has. And it sounds to me like that's a bit of a similar situation as to what you're facing. Now, has that professor said anything about harming your grades? I mean, it's one thing to be slanted with the way that they approach you, and certainly if it's making you feel as though it's an abusive environment, that is something you can go to your dean of academics and say, look, this isn't conducive. He's either directly badgering students and harming the educational environment of the school, and that looks poorly on the school itself and badly on the school itself. But has he done anything directly, as in, I'm going to flunk you if you speak about Trump in a good light?
Well, it was more.
Okay.
It was more of him telling the students that he didn't get his money legitimately, and all of it was inherited.
Okay. So he was essentially saying to that student didn't deserve what that student had received because it was inherited? Is that kind of what I'm getting from this?
Well, it's kind of a giant mix. It wasn't just that.
Sure, sure. Um, Basically, there's a couple of things you can do. One of the things you can do is you can sit there and basically challenge the professor to say, how is it that this is the one and only point of view? I thought the whole purpose of a liberal arts degree or a liberal arts education, university education, was to broaden the horizons of the students, to teach the students how to think. And that means that there is not one mindset that is superior to other mindsets. Because the way that you literally work it, and this, I'm going to give you something that'll just drive your professor nuts. It's called the free marketplace of ideas. The whole idea is that we have the ability to exchange our thoughts, to share our thoughts without the fear of that kind of judgment. And you really want to throw something at him? You say racist with conservatives all the time, but who is it that goes forth and supports divisiveness? Who is it that sits there and works against this whole notion of there being one identity for the American people? You see, when you speak of identity politics, what you're doing is you're breaking down into a discrimination type of mentality. And it's the way that plays out is that what they're doing is they're saying they're choosing between a certain type and applying a certain type of mentality to it. That's having discriminating tastes. I'm not going to go out and buy a car that doesn't have an engine in it. I'm discriminating against that because it's not beneficial. That's almost how stereotyping works too. They try and say there's a certain truth to it. But with this idea of the conservatives being racist and whatnot, conservatives, when you go to the root of the word, it means to preserve what's already there. And what we're trying to preserve is the Constitution and the foundational documents of this nation. And the most beautiful language in the Declaration of Independence that was penned by Thomas Jefferson was, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, meaning mankind, all of humanity, are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain fundamental and unalienable rights, meaning rights that cannot be taken away without due process under the law, meaning a notice and a hearing, and being judged by a jury of your peers. That, with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which means property. So it sounds like a lot of the litany of the problems that he has been coming forth with, at least from what you've mentioned here, is that he doesn't like the idea of private property. He thinks all conservatives are just racist bigots that sit on the back porch and twiddle their banjo all day. That they're probably neo-Confederates running around with their battle flags trying to say this is, our statement against black people. That's a stereotype. And I can certainly see how this is a very oppressive sort of feeling that he's engendering.
It's projectionism. It's projectionism.
Exactly what it is.
I can understand. I could tolerate it if it's one person, but if it's being taught to people who are there to learn, it's not the same.
Right. Well, let me give you some of my experiences. Let me give you some of my experiences. The paper I spoke of earlier, where I wrote a paper on Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and I was accused of plagiarism. Now, and Randy knows the whole story. In fact, he was with me through thick and thin on this, but I didn't do myself any favors by way of preventing any attention coming to me. In fact, I actually I enjoyed some of the attention because it gave rise to actual logical thought within the classroom. The first week of class, we were asked a question. The class was social problems, and we were asked to come up with a social problem that plagues society. Now, me being the non-politically correct person that I am, and the declarant of war on political correctness, I said that political correctness was, in fact, a social problem, and it truly is, along with moral relativism indoctrination and revisionist history. And my professor, she was just kind of baffled. And I knew that she wanted an explanation. And I says, yeah, okay, I'll give it to you. I'll give you an example. Remember the Flintstones cartoon show, the theme song, where it says, we'll have a gay old time. I says, you can't say that anymore because it's politically incorrect. The term gay has been bastardized, for lack of a better term. It's been hijacked, and now it is used as a slander or some kind of defamatory word. I says, now, this is an issue, all because of political correctness. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And I was made to feel in such the same way you are, to where I felt that if I went to class, I was going to be ostracized, I was going to be demonized. I didn't feel academically safe. I felt that my education was in jeopardy because of me not being politically correct, B, thinking for myself and challenging the professor when I knew that she was trying to indoctrinate not only me but the rest of the class. And I didn't do it so much for myself. I did it because there was other individuals there that were fresh out of high school. It was their first semester in some cases, or first year of college. By this time, this is my final semester, which I've been there for 5 years already, with finishing up 2 degrees. And I did it so much for them, more so than anything else, to invoke logical reasoning and thought, to get them to think for themselves, to see through all the crap and the negativity and the indoctrination. Did I put my head on the chopping block for that? Absolutely. Because it's my obligation as a free sovereign and ultimate wielder of sovereignty and follower of the Constitution to do this for my fellow citizens. So I know exactly where you've been. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I've lived it. And I can tell you right now, a little bit of advice: don't stop doing what you're doing. Don't stop thinking for yourself. Don't forsake your authority that you have as an ultimate wielder of sovereignty with the Constitution. Don't ever let that go. Stand your ground, and trust me, things will always turn out the way that they're supposed to.
All right. On a radio station. All right.
Let me share a story with you. One that was mine. I had a professor who had 2 PhDs, one in education and one in history. I was a history major before I went on to law school. So if I sound highfalutin, oh, that's okay.
All right, well, I'll make sure to subscribe, and I'll check you guys next stream.
Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure to have you. And if you ever need our help, just look us up on Facebook. You can also shoot us an email, or follow us on Twitter, what have you. We'll have that information up, and we'll be perfectly willing, happy, and everything to reach out to you. Thank you again for coming on, and we understand the problems that you're facing.
All right, well, I put my email on there. Just email me the information. All right, see ya.
Sure thing. We can do that. So, you see, folks, what we're facing now is a challenge here with the indoctrination of our youth, because that's what that was showing me. The story is that our founding fathers were the ones that went out and said that we had to have knowledge, that we had to use knowledge, the spreading of knowledge, to ensure the vitality of the republic. That means that in our individual capacity, that we reach out to other students, that we reach out and try and make something better. And I'm going to go ahead and finish that story that I had started for Octavia there. And that was this. I had the professor sit there and tell everybody in the class that George Washington was essentially an illiterate drunk. Now, did he have any factual backing for this? And the answer is no. There was no factual backing for it whatsoever. It was basically something he had pulled directly out of his posterior. And it was my duty to challenge him. And the way that I challenged him was intellectual. I knew that the memoirs that we had of the French and Indian War, what's known as the 7 Years' War in Europe, came from George Washington. And I pulled it up on my laptop, and I raised my hand, and I said, well, Professor so-and-so, let me read you something here, because it pertains to what we're discussing. And I started quoting Washington's memoirs. And I said, that's beautifully written, isn't it? Yes. I said, do you know who wrote it? He just kind of looked at me shocked. No, I don't. George Washington. Professor, would you like to rephrase the statement that you made, basically proclaiming that George Washington was a bumpkin, an illiterate fool?
Drunken,
Jeremy,
illiterate fool.
Yeah, I know. And Jeremy, one of the things is, I definitely do want him to get the information. If you could go ahead and copy his email address and
Sure.
and save that so that we can get the Facebook page to him and the Twitter account to him as well.
Absolutely.
I don't want to lose him.
No, and I'm hoping, Randy, and see, again, this project, if you will, that we are utilizing this for. Octavia is living proof, folks. Living proof that there is something very, very wrong with this country in terms of people's lives being jeopardized, their rights being jeopardized, their minds being jeopardized. He's living it. He's going in and experienced it. I've experienced it. Randy's experienced it. I'm sure everybody that's listening has experienced it. And we cannot simply allow this to go on any further. We can't. If there is anybody out there listening, as you've all just witnessed, we have no qualms about doing what we can to get anybody on our show to where we can help them. That this is our civic obligation and duty to each other and to ourselves. So absolutely, Rainey. I mean, I'm writing it right now. I've got it copy and paste, but good old pen and paper. You can't.
And also have the show follow him. I think that would be good too.
And again, we'll just continue to do what we do. We have to. We can't stop. We've already set the ball in motion. It's rolling. It's picking up speed. And if we don't do this for each other, then guess what? Our posterity will have nobody to do it for them. They won't be around to do it for anybody else. That's the perpetual obligation that we have. That is what our founding fathers set forth with their intentions of this experiment they call a constitutional representative republic. And it's the notion of perpetual freedom and liberty.
Yeah, right. And there's another thing that you can do as a student. That is with Facebook having the groups that they do and social media being what it is, you can seek out like-minded students that share your political beliefs. You can join the groups like the Young Republicans. And it doesn't matter whether you support Trump, whether you support El Jefe, Jeb A. Bush. That doesn't matter. What matters is if you are seeking to have an understanding of the Constitution and an ability to interact with like-minded people to deal with, because let's face it, this is a type of intellectual abuse that is going on our campuses and has been going on our campuses for far too long. In fact, this goes all the way back and ties directly into a point that Zygmunt Dobbs made when he and Archibald Roosevelt with the Veritas Project were sitting there talking about how the Fabian socialists were incrementally infiltrating our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border. And that is that they try and make you feel apprehensive. Do not fear the ability to stand up to them. I know it's hard. I had a professor give me a C because I called FDR a racist, flipping the leftist line on them for the Korematsu case, which was the case arguing in favor of throwing the Nisei, or the second-born generation of Japanese Americans in the internment camps. I said essentially he was a racist quack, and that he was violating their rights. The professor didn't like that, and so she gave me a C. The only C I ever had in college. And I got it overturned because I went to the dean of education, and I said, this does not represent my institution. I spent money, because it was a private school. You can still say, even at a state-run school, that, my tuition is astronomical. I'm spending all of this money, and I'm being graded harshly for something that's based on opinion, not on fact. Well, that's not what the school is about. And guess what? You can then get them into legal trouble on the basis of a breach of contract. Because let's face it, that is a breach of contract.
Yeah, and, with my situation, it didn't escalate that far. It could have, and I was fully prepared to, go to that level if it needed to go to that level. So, again, it all boils down to essentially having a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our Constitution, knowing what your rights are, knowing what authorities you have under the Constitution as a party in that social contract between we the people and the governments, state and federal. Without having that knowledge, without understanding how these things work, without understanding what is wrong, what's allowable, what's not allowable, it makes it easier when you have that understanding to decipher these things. Sure. It makes it 10 times harder because now you feel like, and numerous times, Randy, you and I've had conversations about issues that have come up with me in academia. And, these are my thoughts. This is what I'm thinking about doing. How does that sound? And you say, well, that's all fine and good, but I would also look at it handling it this way. And, feeding off of each other. Again, part of being an ultimate wielder of sovereignty is not only being willing to be held accountable, but that's the only way you can actually hold other people accountable. But you have to be able to have that civil discourse. There has to be a meeting of the minds. All these people want to talk about, well, the Democrats and Republicans are going to reach across the aisle and compromise. That's not the kind of compromise that this country could afford. It's the kind of compromise that will take a great nation like ours, our republic, and put us into ruins. Mm-hmm. It's history has showed us that. You look at all the great so-called compromises throughout history. I mean, look at the Treaty of Versailles. How did that work? Look at the Crimean War. Right. Look at all these other different things.
There's only one great compromise that ever worked, and that was the idea of having the House of Representatives and the Senate. And again, what was that? It was essentially saying neither side gets what they want here entirely, but it's what benefits the entire nation. That of, we can't have it to where the small populous states are just overrun by the big populous states. And you know what? That's the Electoral College. That's the very thing that these people are going out there and protesting. That's what they're fighting. They want to remove that, but that's in the Constitution. That's the only compromise that works. Not when it comes to principles and values. So never, ever let anyone tell you how to think or what to think. You build that on your own. And yes, it means you'll have to stand up and defend it, and that at times can clearly be uncomfortable. But, no pain, no gain. And we will definitely have more opportunities in the future to discuss things of this nature, particularly when it comes to academia. But we have reached the point now, folks, where it is time for us to draw a close to this program. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back as we begin our descent to pour you an extra round of alcohol. If she tells you what to think, just push her out of the plane. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright. I've been joined on this evening's program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We want to send out a special thank you to Octavia for being our first guest.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Again, as we say every time, we love having this ability to interact with you. So always feel free to pipe up, either in the live chat or on comments or on Facebook. If we're actually broadcasting, the live chat is the best way to hit us up. And if you give us your contact information like that, it's the easiest way for us to get you onto the program, work you in, and then we can have that exchange. And we are very excited about that and having the ability to add on to that. Folks, as always, you can leave comments in the comment section, the live chat while it's up. You can leave it on Facebook or Google+. You can also follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX, and there you will find the departure board that lists my Twitter account, Jeremy's Twitter account, the Blogspot page, where once again I've fallen behind on getting the audio-only ones up. I am only human. I don't have an orange hue of skin, and I don't snort methamphetamine like Dumpy.
Well, maybe if your hands were a little bit smaller than what they are, then maybe...
Yeah. But the other thing it lists is the Cafe Press account. Jeremy, tell them a little bit about that.
Okay, well, the Cafe Press account, if those of you who are unfamiliar with the Cafe Press, it's a nice little website where novelties and goodies can be purchased to show your support for the show, but more importantly, to show support for yourself or your friends and loved ones. Folks, we have various different little novelties on there: drinking glasses, shot glasses, ties, license plates, decals, bumper stickers, so on and so forth, hoodies, sweatshirts, and a whole lot of other neat, nifty little things. Now, I am still in the process of working up a couple of different ideas that and I don't want to put them on there just yet. It's going to be kind of a surprise. Might make it there before Memorial Day. Who knows? Depending on what happens after January 20th. But folks, we're going to see what we can do to upgrade some of this stuff on there. Maybe work out some discount packages and deals for you all. Because, well, we appreciate the patronage and we appreciate you as a listening audience. And if anybody happens to catch the flight attendant, traipsing around there or whatever, offer her a flight up into the plane and then push her out of it.
Exactly. As always, folks, thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. We do this for you, and we will never stop or back away from that. And we will see you again next time. Please do take care.